For 3 days after their first date, Kina disappeared. No texts, no calls, no visits to the cafe where Jace worked. Nothing. Even the messages he sent were met with silence. It was unlike her, and the longer it went on, the more it gnawed at him. Jace began to spiral, dissecting every word he'd said, every move he'd made that night. Had he done something wrong? Said something offhand that upset her? Kina wasn't the type to vanish like this. Even when he had turned her down in the past, she'd come back, bold and unshaken. So why the sudden silence now? Maybe she'd realized he wasn't what she wanted after all. That thought alone shouldn't have stung, but it did. And Jace hated that it did. He tried. He'd gone out of his way to make their first date enjoyable. So why did he feel like he'd failed? "You look like someone kicked your puppy," Julie, his sister, teased one afternoon. They were supposed to be spending some quality time together, but his distant expression gave him away. "I'm fine," Jace muttered, his tone curt as he stared at nothing in particular. Julie raised an eyebrow. "Fine? You don't look fine. You've got that little wrinkle between your brows again. The one you get when things aren't going your way. Trouble at school? A bad exam grade? Broke at work?" she asked with a smirk. Jace winced. His entire life revolved around school and his job, so he supposed it wasn't surprising that Julie couldn't imagine him being upset about something else. "None of the above," he replied flatly. "Then spill. What's eating you?" she pressed, leaning forward. He let out a sigh. "I went on a date with a girl. Now she's ghosting me," he said, keeping his tone as neutral as possible. Julie blinked, then burst into laughter. "You? A date? You?" She laughed so hard she had to hold her stomach. "Well, no wonder you're a mess. I didn't even think you'd know how to date." "Gee, thanks," he said dryly, rolling his eyes. "This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you." Julie wiped a tear from her eye, still grinning. "Alright, I'm sorry. But come on, don't beat yourself up over it. Sometimes we girls just need time to think. She'll call you back, I'm sure of it. No one in their right mind would ghost my lovely brother," she said with mock sincerity, patting his shoulder. Jace rolled his eyes again, but her words lingered. "Kina didn't seem indecisive when she was chasing me." The truth was, he didn't think she needed time to think. No, her silence felt final, like she'd decided he wasn't worth the effort. And for some reason that thought hurt more than it should have. The days dragged on and still no sign of Kina. Jace's mind wandered into darker places. What if something had happened to her? She'd been traveling between Seoul and Gangnam frequently because of him. What if she'd been in an accident? He would have heard about it on the news though. Kina wasn't just anyone. As the daughter of the fourth richest man in the country, her name alone would have made headlines. So why had she vanished? Was she really so disappointed in him that she'd decided to disappear? It wasn't until Saturday that the cafe door opened, and Kina walked in as if nothing had happened. Jace froze. Relief washed over him, but it was quickly overtaken by frustration. Without thinking, he asked a coworker to cover for him and hurried to her side, pulling her toward a quiet corner. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded, his voice low but urgent. "I thought something happened to you." Kina blinked, then smirked. "Ah, so you care about me, boyfie," she teased, her tone playful. "This isn't a joke, Kina." Her smirk softened into a faint smile. "Family stuff," she said simply. Her voice was quieter than usual, almost subdued. Jace sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I thought you were ghosting me," he admitted. Kina tilted her head, then let out a soft laugh. "Ghost you? After everything I went through to finally get you to say yes? Please." She rolled her eyes. "Besides, if I was going to ghost you, I'd at least wait until after the second date." Despite himself, Jace couldn't help but chuckle. But something about her didn't feel right. Her usual spark seemed dimmed. "What's going on, Kina?" he asked gently. She hesitated, her gaze dropping. "It's nothing, Kina," he insisted softly. She sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "My parents want me to marry someone. It's for business, an arrangement. It started as a casual dinner, but now, apparently he's my future husband." Jace's stomach sank. The idea of Kina with someone else, of her marrying someone else, hit him like a punch to the gut. He couldn't explain why it bothered him so much, but it did. "And, do you want that?" he asked hesitantly. Kina's lips quirked into a bitter smile. "What I want doesn't matter. It's what my parents want, and they always get their way." Jace frowned. a flicker of anger rising in his chest. That's ridiculous. You can't just let them decide your life for you. What about what you want? Her gaze snapped to his, something fiery in her eyes now. What I wanted was you, Jace. But after 2 weeks it's gonna be over 'cause you don't actually want me. So no, what I want doesn't matter anymore. Her words hit him like a slap, leaving him stunned. He didn't even notice when his manager called his name. Jace, back to work. Just a minute, he called, still focused on Kina. She took a deep breath, pulling out a card and handing it to him. I'm staying in Seoul for next week. Here's my address. If you want to talk or not, whatever. It's up to you. She turned to leave, but Jace couldn't let her go. Kina, he called after her. She turned back, her gaze expectant. He wanted to say something, anything, to stop her from thinking she didn't matter. But the words stuck in his throat. It was, good to see you, he said finally. Kina's lips twitched into a smile. Go back to work, boyfie. And with that she walked out the door, leaving Jace standing there, his emotions in chaos.